The information provided in this video is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be considered financial, investment, tax, or legal advice. Investing involves risk, including the possible loss of the principal. Always do your own research and consult with a qualified financial advisor before making any investment decisions. The opinions expressed are those of the host and the guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of any affiliated organizations. So, just over the weekend, lads, I was having a conversation with a person who was talking about shorting SpaceX. And I was trying to explain to him the dangers of shorting shares, specifically shares. There's a difference between shorting indices and shares because indices, you're covered by a lot of products that are inside it, obviously, but the shares themselves is just one product. I was trying to explain to him that when you buy a share, the downside is zero, technically. But when you sell a share, i.e., you short it without owning it, your downside is technically infinity. Now, I know that's a bit daft when people talk about it, but what's going on in the market these days is that you do have groups of people who are specifically looking out for short sellers, people who do sell shares, and they're basically spiking the share price up on the back of nothing. And it's basically it's quite a dangerous play these days, I think, for an individual to do. Do you guys have opinions about shorting the market? Have you ever shorted the market, Jeff, yourself, or do you generally just a buyer only?
I'm trying to think if I have, Phil. To be honest, I don't think I have actually.
Any recent shares you short, Jeff?
Well, just before that, John. Well, that is a fair point. But no, in general, I wouldn't short the market unless you're doing it for a specific reason. And as you said yourself there, like when you're long a share, your downside is zero. So you put 3,000 in, you can lose 3,000, and you probably won't. But you're right. On the other side, you put in 3,000, you could lose 9, 12, whatever it is. But then when you kind of, I did have a think about that because I was talking. We mentioned it that you were talking to somebody over the weekend. That I suppose technically you could really short more of the blue chip stuff that's not doing very well. We come back to Volkswagen, or Sanofi.
That's an interesting point. Very interesting.
Yeah, well, I never really thought about that as well. Like if you short SpaceX or what's the Micron? Is it that you say is that the one that's coming out? Right. So if you, let's say you'd shorted that like a year ago or something, you're down 300-400%. It's kind of different to shorting Sanofi, which, and I know the range because I've been in and out a little bit, but same thing. You could have you put in shorts in Volkswagen over the last year or two, and again it's gone up to it's broken $1 or so, and then you sell it, 90 somethings back down to 80 somethings.
But even
all day long,
But you're right about that because those firms, if they do pop, so say you do sell them for 100, they'll only pop about 10%. I mean, on the back of some sort of news. I think that's the huge difference between the new tech stocks and, as you say, the legacy shares. So so it's not a huge danger.
You would even imagine Volkswagen pops on the back of they're going to be doing arms contracting for we mentioned that earlier. First of all, how high does it pop? I mean, it pops originally, but then people go, well, what's in the detail? And then you have a lot of people along that share. They're going, Jesus, thank God I'm out. And there could be a lot of pressure on the share to kind of bring it back down because people are getting out of it. So I suppose I just never really been that comfortable selling shares. I probably look for a reason to buy a share rather than sell it.
Yeah, I was listening to a trader on YouTube. He has very similar philosophy to you, that he never ever shorts the market ever. Because what he said, he spent so much time when he shorts the market waiting for the outcome that he missed so many opportunities. And then sometimes he'd have to pay up and get out of his short, or maybe his short will make him money. But he's missed opportunities by specifically concentrating on shorting the market. And he was doing indices, he was shorting them. So what he does himself is that he's continuously long, and he hedges, he goes short by buying puts. Now the problem with buying puts is a put is a market instrument that you're basically taking a bet that the market will fall. He says that you have to pay the premium for it, obviously. Now, but he's been paying premium for the past 2 years of about 3% per year. which does have an effect on his portfolio. But with such huge rises in what he is long, the S&P, the Nasdaq, really the puts, it's a small cost, but he said it's a much better strategy for him than just shorting the S&P and watching it rising 18%. And he's going suddenly his philosophy is that his short should be right, so therefore he's not buying, and so he's missing out on so many opportunities. I presume, John, you never short, do you? As a philosophy?
As generally, I don't like shorting, no, especially after what happened to GameStop and a couple of other shares like that after COVID or during COVID. I do short the odd time around corporate actions, but it's very short term. It's for a couple of weeks maybe, and there's a specific kind of wriggle that I do, but it's I don't actually like the idea of shorting a stock for the sake of shorting it, because I think there's bad news coming up and around like that. I just don't like that. It's too dangerous. I think we just, if we point out what happened with GameStop going back to COVID, GameStop was a games company, or and they're based in malls in America, you know, in shopping centers all around the world. And obviously with COVID, no one's going to these places, and technically the share was doing brutal. It was losing money. It was pretty much on the verge of bankruptcy, and people were shorting them left, right, and center. And suddenly the share price goes up like 300-400%. And the reason is simple: that the people realized that they were being shorted. There's a limited amount of shares out there, so people came along, started buying up these shares to crazy high prices, way, way, way above any possible value they could ever have.
Yeah.
But the rules said that the people that were short them had to cover them. So they had to go back into the market and buy the shares back. They had no choice. And they short 1,000 quid's worth. They were losing 3, 4, 5,000 on the deal. So
that was a fascinating trade, in that basically what happened there with the Robinhood, it was sorry, not Robinhood, it was what was the platform? There was a social
was it
media
Reddit?
platform, Reddit, yes. And it was basically what this guy did. He said, because everyone got their COVID money, maybe a couple of $1,000, and he said at 1 minute before the market is open, this guy put this huge post out there saying that 1 minute before the market open, I'm going to pick a share, and everyone get in and buy it. So no one knew which share he was going to pick. Now he picked GameStop, and as you say, the short sellers were there thinking, there were people shorting it from say $20 to get out to $5 to get out. Suddenly it was trading $300. It was just like, for the love of God. And as you say, you have to get out, because as long as
the rules,
the rules are, yeah.
So value went out the window. Value wasn't relevant. It was just, what are the rules of this share? There's 100 shares out there. We're short 100 of them. The people who lent them to us want them back. Where can I buy them back? I just got to buy them back way, way higher. So
the other thing is, you could fool
squeeze.
yourself. You could fool yourself into thinking, that, I wouldn't sell these shares, or I wouldn't sell those. I wouldn't get caught in that.
Yeah,
but you never
would.
know, right? If you're looking to sell things,
GameStop was the most obvious share to short in COVID, around COVID.
And then sometimes the obvious ones are the ones that.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? It's so obvious. It was obvious to other people, and they said, well, actually, people are going to be doing this, so we'll target those people and we'll squeeze the living bejesus out of them. And that's what happened. And your brokerage account says, well, actually, you short 1,000 quid's worth, you got 5 grand in your account, the shares are 500%, you're 5,000 quid offside. Cut the
Is it
trade,
not,
get
though?
out.
But is it not a huge danger that if you have people who aren't shorting shares anymore, that price discovery is, shorting shares was an important part of what the market was, because there were companies, Enron, classic case, where there was a lot of fiddling of the books going on, okay, and the shorters came in, and it was your man Jim Chanos. He was the guy that brought it to light. He figured it all out, and he said, this company is just a disaster. This is just fictional accountancy. It's booking profits now and booking losses later on. So it's a very important part of the market is to have short sellers out there to give proper price discovery of what things are. Now, I would be very, very dubious about shorting any share, except, as you say, Jeff, except the big ones, at this stage, because so are we missing one half of the market there by the shorters? disappearing.
Well, you did mention in there earlier on that you technically could buy puts in it, right? If I suppose in the bigger companies you can buy puts, right?
Yeah.
Calls, you can trade the options. But also, look, I mean, you're talking about an example where somebody, did the work and sort of found out that it's, that there's accountancy errors. It doesn't make any sense, and they were right. So by shorting the market on that one, you're taking a position on something that you've done a lot of homework on, right? It's not a hunch. It's not everybody else is selling the market or something,
But also, I would say then GameStop. I mean, they had shops in shopping centers, which is just so old fashioned. It's like Blockbuster or something like that.
And they were empty.
And they were empty. So
Yeah,
it was the same thing. People had done their work on it and said this company is worth. I think it was worth $5 a share or something like that, and people were shorting
yeah,
for
but
20,
the
25.
other one had was fraud and was involved. But
Right.
as soon as you're talking about accountancy errors and different things like that, sure, even who W.H. Smith had accountancy errors there a year ago, 8, 9, 10 months ago, and they whacked it 40%, and they weren't massive accountancy errors. Like but so any term of any fraud or accountancy issues, they don't like it. But like by saying, oh, there's a company that's not doing well, it's COVID, we're closing shops, let's go short that. Right? That to me would be slightly different. You're kind of, I suppose you're taking a position then, right? But not on like somebody could buy out that and turn it into some kind of sweet shop thing, and all the kids go and it explodes. The upside,
but it's not really that. I think what happened with GameStop highlighted the fact that the rule is, it's not the value of the company that's important in that situation. It's the rules behind the trading of the shares. And to me, there's quite a few rules in the exchanges which are ridiculous. I mean, the fact that, like, as I say, SpaceX IPO'd at 1.75 million. If they IPO trillion, sorry,
Trillion, John. Trillion.
trillion,
Yeah.
sorry. Well, even a billion sounds a lot for a company
Yeah.
that loses money to me. But if they IPO'd at 5 trillion, the same ETFs will be forced to buy their shares. It's ridiculous. There's no discretion there. We're a tracking fund. We have to buy these shares wherever they're trading, regardless of value. So if I know that and I come in, I buy up all the shares in SpaceX, and I bring, I'm a bazillionaire from the future that's come back to the past, and I push the price up to 5 trillion, then I know I'm going to be able to sell those shares out to the trackers, the fund trackers, even if the company's worthless, because they're the rules. That's what they have to do. They don't have discretion. And I believe in the States that over 50% of the money in the equity market is through passive funds that do this. So that to me is a big worry going forward for the exchanges and for
Do
trading
you think
shares.
do you think short sellers are missing from the market, Jeff? From over the past few years, do you get a feeling that short sellers are missing? I can't get any evidence for it, except the fear.
it's funny because kind of started trading futures and options. So with the futures, you can buy them or sell. So then when I started looking at stocks and people going, oh, you got to borrow them to do it, I'm like, what are you talking to sell bloody things? I mean, I just, you have to own the stock to borrow to do, so yeah, I don't know. I think there's price discovery either way, right? And this might be the thing as well. And John sort of mentioned there as well about the passive index buying for the sake of buying, right? But if you have like let's say you take the let's European pharma sector, right? You see 5 or 6 big companies there. Some of them are doing well, some of them are doing average, some of them aren't doing so well. So you buy the company that's doing well, and it goes up and reflects in the price, right? You don't have to sell the other ones. So I think, I don't know, I wonder if there was no short selling. With the companies that aren't doing well, does not really get bought, and the companies that are doing well, they get bought, and the price discovery is, where it is.
Well, I have to say, from my own experience, short selling has a lot of sleepless nights, because of the lack of the knowledge of the downside. And I must say, I always found myself much happier being long things than being short things, because when you're short, as you said, John, when you're long, you have your defined loss. It's just there, and you sort of get used to that concept that, okay, if the worst comes to the worst, this is what I actually lose. But when you're short, I found myself just thinking, God, if this thing pops 10%, then another 10%, and then you start getting into a what the hell am I doing trade, So until you got to basic it out at the top usually, So yeah, personally speaking, I'm just not a huge fan of it.
I guess, Jeff, can you explain about the interest rates and how they change on when you short sell stocks as well? That's another risk, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Well, see, then again, it comes back to my point there about when you're buying and selling futures, or stock, that you have to borrow the stock. If you want to go short the stock, you got to borrow the stock from someone, and that's subject to to pay an overnight rate, and that's subject to change over the course of, I presume it's days, right? So you can all of a sudden be paying 10%. It's not overnight; it's 10% annualized.
Right.
So what's that over a month is only roughly 1%. So if
that can change though, right?
It can change. So if you're borrowing at 1% per month, and I presume you're typically not making a very short play, and that could go up to 50, 70, 100%, and therefore it's nearly 8 to 9% a month. If the stock's not moving and you're shorted, you're paying,
it's constant pain.
Costs, right?
If nothing happens, you're losing money. If something happens against you, you're losing money, and if something happens for you, you're making money. So you got two downsides there, and the fact that rate can change intraday as well.
Yeah, but actually, just on that, I wonder. You might know the answer to this. If you're selling, say, again, we're talking about your Sanofis or Volkswagens. I'm not picking on those companies, but if you're selling them, there's probably more borrow out there because they're more broad-based shares.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at, say, your GameStop, or there's probably a whole technical element there of catching people in a very high borrowing squeeze as well, right?
Yeah, definitely.
They're smaller company. Less liquid.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so just one last thing. Do you ever hedge your portfolio, Jeff? Do you ever buy puts for the year type thing?
No.
You get a bit.
No.
Things are a bit sort of toppy. No.
No, I have. So a couple of things that I've done is I've turned stuff into cash. Liquidated certain things and put them into cash and held more cash. But in fairness, I'm not even sure whenever that's really, certainly over the last, you go back 20 odd years, has that paid off, because if you take even 2007 or not the housing, but the dot-com before that, let's say 2007, the market was going up and up and up and then collapses. And if you started getting out, let's say you were prudent, you got out at certain points, you never really know how the market's going to turn around again. And then it turned around and all of a sudden it starts grinding higher and higher. So
well, that was
unless I believe we're in a bit of a bear move down, but then you could just reduce your portfolio size and put it into more defensive, maybe dividend paying stocks that aren't or into cash, which gets or bonds which get a yield.
But that was the trader's point about who never sells, he only buys puts, because when you get the rebound, it's literally the first 10 days is a huge proportion of the rebound of stocks.
Yeah.
Right. It just is.
How do you know when that comes?
Well, that's why he never goes short. That's why that's why he buys the puts. So his portfolio will go all the way back down again. His puts will cover his portfolio, i.e. that. But the big thing is that huge upside. He's part of it because he owns the stocks, and then he just takes his puts off. It's an interesting.
I was going to comment on that, Phil. I don't buy puts in the equities market simply because they're so heavily priced compared to the upside calls in general for regular stocks. There's a massive put skew, which makes them quite expensive. I think it's great if you own them and the market tanks, you feel like you've made money. But I don't think you need to get that complex on stuff. I think just own the market, accept the dips, accept the rises, and just stay invested. I think.
I think on that, John,
over 20 years, that
I think on that, John, certainly again, you're talking about the bigger stocks. I mean, if you really, you could just sell upside calls.
Yeah. That's exactly it. Yeah.
And enhance the portfolio, and if we blow up to the upside, you lose a bit, rebuy them, but you're covered by July on them anyway.
My idea of liquidating stocks, being short the market, is switching into dividend paying stocks. You know, nice conservative stocks that pay a dividend no matter what. They've a lower beta. Sorry, so they'll go down less than the market on average. They'll go up less than the market on average. They're like they're a stock that behaves partly like a stock and partly like a bond because of the dividends they pay. So when I'm thinking stuff is toppy, I might take stuff off the table and put it into those kind of stocks. But in general, I leave it in the market and I don't worry about the downside too much because, as I say, I'm not for most of what I do. I'm not doing it for 3 to 6 months. I'm basically looking for a place to house money and keep it and for it to grow. And every so often I'm thinking we're in a super, like for example, now I believe we're in a super cycle or there's a super cycle coming up in terms of AI companies. And I do think, I don't know which sectors, but I do believe certain sectors are going to go through the roof in the next 5 years. And I think if you're trying to pick tops and bottoms, all that kind of stuff, it means you're not in the market a lot of the times, and you may miss this. So that's why I just like to stay invested at the moment.
Mm.
Okay, we'll wrap it up there, lads. Thank you very much for all your great information.
Jeff, Phil, thank you again as always.
And we shall see you next Monday, and let's see how the PCE does this week.
Cool.
John, that'll be a big one to talk
Thank
next
you.
Monday, and we'll see how it does. All right, guys, have a good one.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks
Bye.
again. Cheers, Phil.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.